The events of World War II. The Axis powers advanced. Alright, the war was fought between the Axis powers we know as Germany, Italy, and Japan. And you can see there in the pictures, there's Hitler with the Nazi flag, Tojo with the Japanese flag, and Mussolini with the Italian flag. And you can see on this map, the Axis powers were all in red. This was in 1942. The Allied powers were France and Britain, and later joined by the United States, China, and the US. The Nazi forces conquered Poland in a swift, massive attack known as the Blitzkrieg, or Lightning War. In April 1940, Hitler overran Norway, Denmark, the Netherlands, and Belgium. In June 1940, the Germans entered Paris. Charles de Gaulle formed a French government in exile because Hitler had taken over the whole country, so the government went into hiding. That's exile. He called on all French forces to continue fighting the Germans. These free French worked from England to liberate their home. This is when France and England worked very hard together to get rid of Hitler. There were major turning points in the war. In 1941, Japan attacked the United States at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. When we were attacked, the next day, we declared war on Japan. This brought the United States into World War II. In the year 1942, there was the Battle of Stalingrad. German forces invaded the Soviet Union and eventually stalled outside of Moscow and Leningrad. Hitler turned south in 1942 to try to take Stalingrad. The whole city fought back against Hitler. Stalin ordered everyone, you fight against the Germans, and they did, and they were able, it took over, a long time, over a year, but they were finally able to defeat the German army. Russian troops in a freezing winter caused the German invaders to surrender in 1943. Soon, German troops began advancing towards Germany. In 1942, you had the Battle of El Alamein, which was in North Africa. The British and U.S. forces surrendered German General Rommel's army in North Africa. A lot of people don't realize that World War II was fought on the shores of North Africa also. In 1943, you had the invasion of Italy. After the victory in North Africa, the British and U.S. troops advanced into Italy, where Hitler was forced to send troops to help because Mussolini and his troops could not fight them off. This helped to split up Hitler's army. In 1944, you had what we call the invasion of Normandy. This is also called D-Day. And this is when the Allies did a massive invasion on the beaches of Normandy in Europe. They broke through German defenses and finally were able to advance towards Paris and free the French from German control. This is the very famous scene you see played out in Saving Private Ryan. The D-Day was one of the greatest military actions in our history. Following D-Day, the Allies moved through France and into Germany. Now, the D-Day invasion caused the German army to fight on a two-front war. They actually had to divide their army up to fight on both sides. And when it's like the saying says, you divide to conquer. By us and Britain and France forcing the German army to divide itself to fight on two different fronts, we weakened them and were finally able to defeat them. You can see here on this map, it's a diagram of the D-Day invasion, and it was a massive, massive invasion. You can see here, and down on the bottom, you'll see they list the actual beaches where the different troops landed. You had the Utah Beach, Omaha Beach, Gold Beach, Juno Beach, and Sword Beach. And today, this is one of the most phenomenal invasions in history, and D-Day survivors go back to this area yearly to go see the place that they once fought, and it is a massive memorial cemetery now today and museums. Finally, in May of 1945, the Germans surrender to the United States, France, and Great Britain. And we call this VE Day because it's victory in Europe. All that surrendered were the Germans. Hitler committed suicide and the Germans surrendered. We did not have VJ Day, or the victory over the Japanese, until August of 1945. In February 1945, the three heads, the strongest men in our world during this time, Franklin Delano Roosevelt from the United States, Winston Churchill from England, and Joseph Stalin from the Soviet Union, met at a Soviet resort called Yalta, and they decided what they were going to do with Europe now that the war was over. How were they going to rebuild? They decided they were going to temporarily divide Germany up. Now, while all this is going on, we still have many, many men fighting in Southeast Asia. The Japanese have not given up anything, and we are losing thousands upon thousands of men a day because the Japanese have openly said they will keep fighting until everyone is dead, till every last Japanese person is dead. They will never, ever surrender. It is because of these that President Truman, because FDR had died at this point, makes the incredible decision, difficult decision, to drop the atomic bomb, which was a new weapon that was created during the time of World War II. And he orders the dropping of an atomic bomb on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. The bomb flattens 4 square miles of the city and kills over 70,000 people. And many of the survivors had extremely high rates of cancer because of all the radiation left over. The Japanese still refused to surrender, and so the U.S. made the decision to drop another atomic bomb on the small city of Nagasaki. This killed an additional 40,000 people. Finally, on August 10th, 1945, Japanese Emperor Hirohito forced his government to surrender. You could see here on the map where those two cities are in Japan, and the picture on the right, those are actually the burnt-in outlines of two people sitting. And that was what was left burnt into the side of a building, is their ashes, because they were so close to the atomic bomb, it just vaporized them. The effects of World War II were far-reaching. The war was a civilian war and total war. It meant every man, woman, and child was involved in the war in some way. Everyone knew somebody who was overseas fighting in the war. Everyone was doing their best to recycle, to stop using items, to watch how much food they eat, everything they could do to help in the war. In Europe, everyone was possible targets for bombing. Normally in the rules of war, you don't aim for churches, you don't aim for schools. Hitler didn't care about any of that. He specifically aimed for churches, he aimed for public buildings, so everyone had to run and hide. Everyone knew when they heard the sirens that an air raid was coming, bombings were coming, and to run to a safe shelter. In 1940, Germany began a blitz, or massive bombing of London using warplanes. Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of Britain at the time, rallied his people. It would go on for months. Democratic governments increased their power during the war because they had to make wartime decisions. They ordered factories to produce war materials instead of civilian goods. Prices and wages were fixed, and consumer goods were rationed. Rations mean you were only allowed to get so much because they were being shipped to help the soldiers overseas. So it could be, coffee, like the top poster there shows you the guy with the smile, soldier with his cup of coffee, and it shows you the woman saying, "I'm patriotic as can be, the ration points won't worry me," meaning she's going to grow her own vegetables and can them so that she doesn't have to worry about what's available on the grocery store shelf, and she's going to help the war by not taking somebody else's food. As men joined that war, women worked in factories and produced planes, ships, ammunitions. They went into the workplace to take over the men's jobs. One of the goals that Hitler had was to create a living space for Germans who he considered racially superior, and he planned to destroy anyone he found to be inferior or not worthy. His plan we now call the Holocaust. Jews were the main target, but he wanted to destroy or enslave others, including Slavs, which are people of Southeast Europe, gypsies, mentally or physically disabled. He also picked on any other type of religions, Jehovah's Witness, Catholics, homosexuals, anyone who didn't look right, if you had a weird birth defect or anything, if you were any type of unique in any way, shape, or form, you could have been chosen and were chosen in many times to go to the camps or to just be killed outright. An attempt to destroy an entire ethnic or religious group is called genocide. Geno, G-E-N-O, is Latin for genus, for the genus species. So inside, C-I-D-E, is Latin for death. So it's the death of a species or a group of people or a group of animals, whatever it is. And Hitler committed genocide against the Jews. He wanted to wipe them off the planet. He began by limiting their rights and encouraging violence against Jews. In 1938, there was Kristallnacht, which we know is the Night of Broken Glass. And Hitler encouraged people to go out, to burn down Jewish businesses, to break Jewish windows, to burn their books, burn their belongings. If you saw a Jewish, boy walking home from work, attack him, mug him, beat him on the street. And that was really the beginning of when, during Kristallnacht, when Hitler decided to really take down the Jewish people, take away their basic rights, and force them into labor camps and eventually concentration camps. After mass arrests and the confinement of Jews in ghettos, Hitler set up concentration camps. Ghettos were areas where the Jews were forced to live in slum-like conditions. At the death camps like Auschwitz, Jews were starved, shot, or gassed to death. By 1945, over 6 million Jews died in what became known as the Holocaust. It wasn't just Hitler who did wartime atrocities. When the Soviet troops invaded Poland to try to kick out the Germans, they also attacked and killed the Polish people themselves with torture, imprisonment, and execution. We've already talked about the rape in Nanjing when Japan invaded China and killed thousands and thousands of people. There was also the Bataan Death March, where Japanese soldiers forced U.S. and Filipino POWs, or prisoners of war, to march up the Bataan Peninsula. Along the way, prisoners were beaten, stabbed, and shot. It was a horrible, horrible march. Thousands of U.S. soldiers died.